Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. There's a brand new Daredevil Born Again first look teaser. We finally have some actual footage because they started filming the series again. There's even footage of what looks like the Phantom X character and more mutants in the MCU. There are a couple new episodes that they're filming. They've already done a bunch of work for the series, so I'll explain what's going on, who's coming back, because we see a whole bunch of Foggy, Nelson, and Karen Page in here. We know the Punisher's coming back. Jessica Jones is the next big Defender that's coming back. They just announced Bullseye is coming back. And based on everything, it seems like we're actually getting a version of Daredevil Season 4 next year when the show actually premieres. So of course I'll do videos for everything. Be sure to subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. This is really like the best possible case scenario. Like, we all thought that it was crazy when Kevin Foggy had to reboot the show. Like, why would you do that? What was so wrong about it before? Turns out they just wanted to make it as good as it could possibly be. If you've been complaining about Marvel, this is like a direct response to stuff like that. Now they're even using Daredevil Born Again to connect with Spider-Man 4 and set that movie up too. So don't worry, I'll talk about all the Spider-Man connections during Daredevil Born Again during the video. But the footage confirms they're paying off a big teaser that they left off with in Daredevil Season 3, which is why we're saying that they're effectively doing Daredevil Season 4. It's basically him leaving his law firm of Murdoch, Nelson, and Page. They finally did the thing, and it sounds like this actually wasn't in the original version of the show. Like, they were going to kill off Karen Page and Foggy Nelson. That's why everybody was so upset in the original version of the show. Like, why would you do that?
Oh, he just wrote all of our names, didn't he? How can you know?
The brand new showrunner that Kevin Foggy hired is the showrunner from the Punisher Netflix series. They have the stunt coordinators from the Daredevil Netflix series. So like all the important crew members who made the Netflix series are back to make Daredevil Born Again. But they apparently already shot episode 1. So this footage isn't from episode 1, it's from some subsequent episode. I believe that they already shot 2 additional extra episodes on top of what they already did, meaning the episode count might be somewhere on par with what the original Netflix series were, which was usually about 13 episodes. Meaning that they might have 4 extra episodes to film right now. This scene is probably from one of those episodes. Some of the storyline that they're doing for the Punisher during Season 1 I think ties in with what they're doing with the new villain Muse from the Daredevil comics. I'll explain him in a second because he's a relatively new character in Marvel Comics just in general. A lot of people asking about the other Defenders characters. Marvel just canonized all the Netflix shows to the MCU, or made it official. I think a lot of people believe that they were canon to the MCU. Marvel just officially said something about that. But the next big Defender character that they haven't talked about too much recently is Jessica Jones. She was supposed to be featured during Echo and bigger during Daredevil Born Again, but they changed a couple things, like they changed the Echo series. There were a bunch of deleted scenes with the Daredevil character that were meant to set her up too. I believe in the original version, Echo would have been talking to Daredevil more regularly in present day, and he would have been helping her with her Kingpin problem in the Black Knife cartel that she deals with during the series. In the final version that we saw, they cut out one of the episodes completely, and you just see Daredevil in the flashback to that period during the 5-year time jump when she was still a teenager and faces him for the first time. All the events of the Echo series are meant to take place in 2025. The events of Daredevil Born Again are like a little bit of a time jump later in 2026 inside the MCU. So this is meant to take place after the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, confirming another big Spider-Man connection here with Karen Page and Foggy Nelson. If they're using the Murdoch, Nelson, and Page law firm during these episodes, it means the law firm would have been active during the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, meaning that he would have been working with them, working at this law firm when he was helping Spider-Man during the events of that movie. So you have to picture Foggy Nelson and Karen Page running around in their office in the background talking about the Spider-Man problem, quote unquote, like how are we going to help this Spider-Man kid out? For those of you wondering about the effects of the spell at the end of that movie, the whole idea is that it would erase all knowledge that Peter Parker was Spider-Man from Daredevil's mind, everyone else's mind, but because of Daredevil's senses, he would probably instantly learn that Peter Parker was Spider-Man if they ran into each other again, which it sounds like they will by the events of Spider-Man 4. This brand new character that everybody thinks is Phantom X does look kind of like Phantom X's comics, is probably going to be the MCU version of the White Tiger character. A lot of people have questions about this. It's not Bucky because Bucky is the White Wolf, not White Tiger. White Tiger is a completely different character. The character did appear in the Heroes for Hire comics, Daredevil, Spider-Man comics. The original version gained superhuman powers using a talisman, so it sounds like they're going with a version of that in the MCU show. Some of the other footage here features the brand new villain Muse, like you see this Kingpin mural that he creates. That's based on his comic book storyline with the gruesome quote-unquote murals that he creates with his victims. It sounds like there's going to be an escalation with the villain, like he creates regular murals, then starts doing it with bodies. In the comics, Muse is meant to be kind of like a street-level Gore the God Butcher, trying to call out a lot of hypocrisy that's happening in New York City, Hell's Kitchen, for instance, because we're talking about Daredevil characters here. And he's inspired to do a lot of this in a horrific kind of way because of what Daredevil is doing. He's trying to create works of art to show people what reality is really like, what it can be like, but he's killing a bunch of people to do it. For instance, in one case, he takes down a judge, a cop, and a politician to create one of his art pieces, quote unquote, and it's meant to be his commentary on the failure of the legal system in Hell's Kitchen. So it would have been like Gore the God Butcher going around killing a bunch of the gods like Zeus, all these other people, and turning them into a work of art and making it a commentary on the failure of the gods in the MCU. I know there are all kinds of complaints about the way they did Gore during that movie, like he didn't butcher a whole lot of gods during that. The comic book storyline, way better if you're a big fan of Gore. But Muse is basically Gore on street level. And it sounds like, based on this mural here with the black and the white, he's actually going to be going after Kingpin. And I think, because they did this in the comics too, so they're basically just doing the comics, is that Kingpin uses all of what Muse does, like all of his victims, all of his crime scenes, to push his anti-vigilante agenda and go after Daredevil, Spider-Man, Punisher, all the street-level heroes, branding them as dangerous vigilantes. Sort of like what he did during Daredevil Season 3 by putting Bullseye in the Daredevil costume, then having Bullseye do all these crazy things and get in trouble with the police, making it seem like it was Daredevil doing all these terrible things, killing people. I also think that they're using Muse's storyline from the comics to parallel Kingpin's storyline in Daredevil seasons with his love of art. Like the whole idea that Vanessa was an art dealer, sold him all these paintings, and Muse is creating all these fine art pieces, but just doing a lot of crazy stuff to do it, like killing a bunch of people to do it. One of the few changes I think they're going to make with that storyline, though, is that he was actually using a lot of Inhumans in the comics to do it, and they haven't canonized Inhumans in the main 616 MCU universe yet. They did canonize them with Black Bolt in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, but that was the 838 universe. So yes, Inhumans are canon, like Miss Marvel in the comics was an Inhuman, but they changed her to an X-Men mutant character inside the MCU. So maybe there'll be some mutant references during Daredevil Born Again, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of X-Men related stuff inside the main MCU universe until that brand new X-Men movie. Deadpool 3 does have a lot of X-Men related stuff in it, but it's meant to be more of a multiverse movie with other universes. Right now in the MCU, like the biggest mutant related stuff that we've had they've canonized is basically Namor in Miss Marvel. But here's where this crosses over with the Punisher's storyline, and this is a big comic book thing in the Daredevil comics featuring Muse. A lot of his crazy art pieces feature references to street-level heroes. Punisher, for instance, is a big one in the comics. So you have to imagine Muse creating this art piece, it being really gruesome crime scene. It references the Punisher, like he looks up to the Punisher and what he's doing. Then Kingpin uses that as an example of why they need to get rid of all the vigilantes. Like, see, this is all because of the Punisher. He's to blame for all this. Before they completely rebooted Daredevil Born Again, there was a slightly different Punisher storyline. I don't know if that survived in the new version, maybe a small version of that, where Punisher was basically killing corrupt cops that were also using his symbol to do a bunch of really shady stuff. I don't know how many episodes Foggy Nelson is in. Karen Page is supposed to be in at least 3 episodes. I think Jessica Jones was also supposed to be in a couple episodes too, but like I said, her storyline changed a little bit, so that might be a little bit different in the final version that we all see. Right now, the only reason why Luke Cage isn't directly coming back, like they canonized all the shows, so like Luke Cage stuff is canon to the MCU. But the actor Mike Coulter is just busy doing other series, so he's unavailable to actually film episodes. So it's not like they're going to recast Luke Cage or anything like that. They'll just wait for him to be ready to be able to come back, and then to have a storyline that justifies him coming back. It's one of those situations where, like, Kevin Feige brings Daredevil back and Spider-Man No Way Home, Kingpin back and Hawkeye, and before that, he never said that they were not canon officially to the MCU. He just had never featured them in the MCU. That's why you usually hear Kevin Feige being really quiet about stuff like that. Like when people ask him about X-Men inside the MCU or Inhumans eventually showing up in the MCU, usually you just don't hear him talk about it because they might already have a plan for that, but that plan could change. A lot of people now asking about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters because if they went through so much trouble to canonize all the Marvel Netflix shows to the MCU, what about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? There were a couple of trailers when they were all putting this stuff on Disney Plus where they featured the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters. There was a little bit of drama behind the scenes between Kevin Feige, the Marvel TV people, and Joss Whedon when they were creating that show. Apparently, Kevin Feige really hated that they brought Coulson back for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And even though it sounds like he likes all the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. people that actually did the show, like the actors themselves, even the writers that worked on the show, it sounds like he wasn't super happy that the show itself just existed. Now it sounds like it's more of a continuity issue where they're not quite sure how they want to introduce Inhumans to the main MCU universe because they're doing so much X-Men stuff first. The producers kind of got into this when they were explaining why it took so long for them to officially recognize the Netflix shows as canon to the MCU, and there was a lot of behind-the-scenes politicking and them just figuring out how to fit them into the continuity. To be fair though, it's way easier for them to do that with the Marvel Netflix series because they don't have a lot of crazy Inhuman stuff that happened during the Netflix series. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a little bit different. So yes, I do think we'll eventually see Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters show up in MCU projects in the future, like Chloe Bennett's character, Ming-Na Wen. Coulson is a little bit harder, a little less likely in present day, but he has come back in flashbacks already. But if there were any question, everybody that's coming back during Daredevil Born Again is mostly just Marvel Netflix people. But if they're canonizing all this stuff, let me know which other characters you want to see come back next. I've already done videos about Iron Fist too, because there is a version of Iron Fist that we're going to see during one of the Marvel TV series later this year, but it's a slightly different version. Click here to learn about that, and click here to learn how Daredevil Born Again is meant to set up the events of Spider-Man 4. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.